Hi everyone, and welcome to my presentation as part of Free From an Allergies Celiac Awareness Week virtual show. My name is Amy Lilly and I'm a dietitian with FODMAP Nutrition and Dietetics, and today I'll be speaking about gluten and hidden sources of gluten that you need to be mindful of when you have celiac disease or you're supporting someone with celiac disease. So let's jump into it. As a bit of background about myself and my team, so we are accredited practicing dietitians and nutritionists specialising in IBS and gut health. So we work with individuals struggling with debilitating gut issues from IBS, celiac disease to SIBO and a lot more to help you find relief from your symptoms and eat comfortably and enjoyably again. So, just to start off with, I thought I would cover a little bit of background on what gluten actually is. And I'm sure a lot of other presentations are covering this, but in case you haven't seen already, gluten is a protein and it's found in wheat, rye, and barley. In Australia, we also consider oats to be containing gluten. As many of you will be aware, it's really important that individuals with celiac disease, as well as people that are supporting those with celiac disease, it's really important that they are experts in label reading so that they can confidently figure out what foods are safe and gluten-free to consume, as well as being able to identify what is gluten containing and what shouldn't be consumed while they're on the gluten-free diet. This, of course, includes food and drinks, but it's also important to be mindful of other factors, including medications and supplements, as well as other products that can come in contact with the mouth, such as lip balm and toothpaste, because these can be incidentally ingested and possibly trigger discomfort and damage for some people with celiac disease. So here are a couple of the common sources of gluten that may often be overlooked on the gluten-free diet. I'm of course not talking about the obvious sources of gluten here, as I'm sure many of you are aware of those. So we're just covering the ones that you may not be aware of that may help you to brush up on your gluten-free diet a little bit or help you to educate others that are following a gluten-free diet for celiac disease. So the first one here is wheat-free products. Now, of course, as we mentioned, wheat contains gluten, but so does rye, barley, and oats. So wheat-free products can still contain these components. The next is rice and corn products. So rice and corn are inherently gluten-free, but there are some products that aren't or may not be. So these include wheat and corn flour, as well as products that have been flavoured with gluten-containing ingredients. So picture rice cakes or corn thins. Sometimes they can be flavoured with gluten-containing flavours or ingredients, as well as some vermicelli noodles, which are rice-based. The next is international products. So in Australia, when international products are resold, they technically should be relabelled, but unfortunately sometimes they may not be. And this can be quite common in health food stores or at markets, that sort of thing. These often you may find will contain oats. The next is flavours and stuffings. So some of these can include some mixed herbs, some chicken salts, even vanilla essence used in baking, chicken stuffing, deli meats, even some flavoured tinned goods. So for example, tinned tuna, tinned salmon, sometimes the flavours involved can contain gluten, as well as sausages, marinades, and stock cubes. So a few there to look out for and really important to be mindful of. The next is thickeners. So not all thickeners are gluten-free. The ones that are numbered 1400 to 1450 that state they are wheat-derived, as well as wheat maltodextrin, need to be avoided. The next is frozen or canned goods. So sometimes frozen or canned veggies, legumes, and even French fries can contain gluten. So really important to look at those products as well. The next is soy products. So sometimes different versions of soy sauce, of course, some soy milks, tofu, and textured vegetable protein or TVP. Sometimes those can contain gluten. And the last here is mock meats. So imitation meats, fake meats. You may be familiar with seitan, which is essentially completely made from gluten, but otherwise those mock meats can also just contain gluten-containing ingredients. So they're the main sources of gluten that may be overlooked. The next one that I think is really important to talk about though is cross-contamination. So, of course, whilst what we eat is really important, it's also the environment and the production process in which we eat that we also need to be aware of and mindful of when we're following a gluten-free diet for celiac disease. So some things to be mindful of here include storage containers. So think bread bins, cereal containers, biscuit tins, all those sorts of things where gluten-containing products and gluten-free products may come into contact with each other. It's really important to be mindful of those and separate them where possible. The next is kitchen appliances. So this includes cake tins, sandwich presses, toasters, all of those sorts of things. And that's where we recommend, if possible, having your own separate appliances, but if not, even products like toast bags to put your gluten-free bread in when toasting in a regular toaster that includes gluten-containing breads can be a really handy tip so that you can minimize cross-contamination. The next is spreads. So even if you have your own butter or peanut butter, jams, any of those sorts of spreads, if someone who is having regular gluten-containing bread or crackers and is putting their knife into those spreads and then spreading them on their own products and reinserting the knife into those spreads, those crumbs from those products can obviously contaminate that spread. Even if you're putting that on your gluten-free bread or your gluten-free crackers, there is a very high risk of cross-contamination there. So really important to have your own separate spreads in that situation. The next is meal preparation utensils. So, for example, sieves and colanders when you're draining pasta, chopping boards, cutlery, pots and pans, all of those sorts of things. Now, while it's not entirely essential that you have your own meal preparation utensils because that can get expensive and it can take up a lot of space in the kitchen, it's really important that you thoroughly clean all of these products, ideally using the gluten-free products first and then following with gluten-containing ones and then thoroughly washing them in between each use. The next is cooking waters and oils. So when you are using water to boil, say, gluten-free pasta, it's really important that the gluten-free pasta is boiled prior to the gluten-containing pasta to reduce the risk of cross-contamination. And always ensuring that you clean or replace the water if you're going to be using gluten-free products following use of gluten-containing products. The other one is cooking oils. So say you're deep frying gluten-free French fries as an example. It's important again that you fry your gluten-free French fries prior to the regular fries being cooked in that deep fryer. This is really important in restaurants as well to make sure they're using clean oil or they have a separate designated gluten-free oil that they use for deep frying. The next is dining out, and I'm sure many of you are aware of how important this one is. And a couple of tips to reduce cross-contamination when dining out is to just call restaurants in advance to ask about their suitable gluten-free options. And also when you are ordering from them, just reiterating that you do have celiac disease and that you actually can't have any food that's come into contact with gluten. So it's not just an intolerance, but it's important that the whole meal preparation process is made with you in mind. All right, so overall in Australia, you definitely can be confident that products labelled gluten-free contain no detectable gluten. As we mentioned earlier, one thing to be aware of here is international products that haven't yet been relabelled. If, though, an ingredient is derived from a gluten-containing grain, it is legally required in Australia to be stated. So if there is, say, for example, corn flour as an option we spoke about earlier, if there's corn flour that's derived from wheat or gluten, it does have to state that. If it just says corn flour on its own, it will be gluten-free and you can trust that. Ultimately, though, our advice here is that if you do find yourself unsure of whether or not a food or an ingredient is gluten-free, it's best just to leave it out. And if you do want further clarification, you can always contact manufacturers to figure out exactly if it is suitable for you or not. In terms of some trustworthy resources that can really help you throughout your time on a gluten-free diet for celiac disease is Celiac Australia. I'm sure you're very familiar with them at this point, but if not, they're a really great company that help to support people living with celiac disease. So in particular, they have an ingredients list booklet that's really, really useful. It has over 800 ingredients and 300 additives used in both Australia and New Zealand. and they go through and tell you whether or not those products are gluten-free. So that's a really useful one, and you can purchase it via their website for just about $10. So it's a very affordable resource to have. They also do have a gluten-free accreditation program. So you can find menu options and restaurants that have been certified to provide safe gluten-free meals. So you can find those accredited businesses on their website, listed under each Australian state to find options near you. So that's all from me today. If you do feel like you need a little bit or more one-on-one or individualized support, please do get in touch. That can be for celiac disease, it can be for IBS, anything at all that we can assist with, we'd be happy to help. So you can find our website and phone number on the screen, as well as our social media profiles if you'd like to have a look and get in touch. So thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations this week. Bye.